Graham Kimpton, the grounds manager at Queen's Club, joins me today on Turf Business TV. Graham, thank you so much for agreeing to come on. Nice to see you.
Pleasure. Thank you very much.
So obviously, as we speak now, you've got the Queen's Club Championships, and that is around 2.5 weeks away, if I'm correct there, so really soon to come.
Yeah, it's pretty busy this end. There's forklifts and people building stands, marquees everywhere at the moment, so it's busy time.
So a good time to catch you though, nonetheless. So I sort of wanted to just sort of chat with you as to what it takes to produce a world-class tennis surface. Obviously yourself and the team do produce there. So let's sort of go into your team and how big it is, and if you get any sort of seasonal staff in to help you with the championships.
Okay, so all year round there's myself and 8 other guys. My deputy's name's Adam Kaspersky, South African lad. He's been with us for 13 years now. He's very well qualified, very accomplished, very experienced, particularly in tennis. And then I've got the other rest of the team, one of which is my son as well, Sam. So he's been here 5 or 6 years, and obviously I'm following on from my dad, who was head groundsman or grounds manager here before me. So there's a bit of a sort of a family history in tennis, and particularly at Queen's. So I've got about 8 people all the year round. We bring in a lot of extras, mainly just for the week of the tournament, and they're mainly court coverers. So the team swells to about 25 people in total. We don't have a covering team for each court, but we have sort of 3 main covering teams. So we sort of have to finish one court, then run on to the next, and that sort of thing. So it's not like a dedicated team for each court, as you might see at Wimbledon. But we're very well accounted for on that front. So I've got no complaints there. Obviously in the winter there's a certain amount less to do, but as we'll probably get onto later, we're a big members club as well, so there's always lots of demands put upon us. Yeah.
That's really interesting, actually, that you mentioned it's a bit of a family affair at Queen's. So tell me a bit about your background. So have you been at Queen's, the whole time, or how did we get there?
Yeah, I pretty much, I went in to do an engineering apprenticeship when I left school back in the mid-80s, and wasn't quite what I was expecting. So Dad, who had worked here since 1966, David, my dad, he said, "Oh, just come do a bit of work here, get a bit of money before you decide what you want to do." Worked here for about 3 years, 4 years, loved the job, did a little bit of traveling to Australia for sort of 6 months, came back, decided I really need to make a career of this, enrolled at Norwood Hall Tertiary College, as it was then, where a lot of the sort of top people in our industry went to at the time, really.
Yeah.
Eddie Seaward and John Warner, lots of other guys. Went there, studied for 5 years on day release, and got my national diploma in turf culture, which obviously doesn't exist anymore, but
No.
I think only about 120 people ever got it, so it was quite difficult to get. There was a lot of elements to it. And obviously carried on working here all that time, did a few other things away from here on the side to get a bit more experience, mainly tennis related. And I've been here now over 35 years, so I've been here a long time. My son Sam took a sort of similar path, decided to do something else, came here, has enjoyed it, and now he's been here for probably 5, 6 years now as well. So not to labour the point, but my uncle, who's sadly no longer with us, one of my dad's older brothers, was a groundsman at the Hurlingham Club for 50 years. And one of my cousins is head of grounds at Leicester University, Adam, up there. So Adam Tester. So yes, it's sort of in the blood, really.
I think it's quite a common occurrence, really. I think because obviously turf care isn't well known really to the general public. I think that's usually the route, isn't it? That it's like a family affair, or that they've got into it for a love of sport, really. So that's nice that obviously your son's getting involved, because it's obviously quite a big issue that getting young people into the industry at the minute. So nice that he's going to carry on that, holding that torch for you. So back to sort of the championships. I think you mentioned there obviously that they've got stands going up and it's all very busy at the minute. So tell me a bit more about where you are now and what's going on at the minute.
So obviously the championship starts on, well, qualifying's on the 10th and 11th, and the championship starts on the 12th, there or thereabouts. I haven't got the exact dates in my head at the moment. But it's 2 weeks this coming Saturday, so we're running out of time really.
Right.
And Queens in general is members club, no permanent stands at all. We've got a pavilion, which is what you see on the TV where all the members sit, but everything else is temporary built. So they build just under 10,000 seats around one court, and as I say, the rest of the year there's on one side there's a few tables and chairs. That's about it really on the pavilion.
Wow.
So it's a big build up. There's also huge hospitality marquees built on site as well to look after those people. They're built, 6 of those are built on top of our clay courts, which are in the middle actually of being, relayed. So that was sort of a winter project where we had some contractors in. So rather than get the clay courts finished and then they build the marquee straight on, and we've got up to sort of 90% of the job done. We just got to put the top sort of 50, 75 mil on. So we didn't want that wreck. So all the marquees are built on there, double story. I mean, it looks like a 5-star hotel when they're finished. Typical thing you see at one of most sporting events. So the whole club really gets taken over. That it's a 6 to 7 week build for the tournament, of the stands, the seating, everything else. A week's tennis. Then you've got 3 weeks D-rig to take it all down, and then we've got probably another 2 weeks to get everything back in place how it should be and get the courts up and running. So, but all that time, with the exception of a few days, there is the ability for members to play still on some of the indoor courts or on the grass. So, trying to build a stadium on which is a relatively small site in sort of 4 miles away from Hyde Park. We're very central. It's quite an undertaking, and just trying to move all the kit around and get everything in place, and with the members on site all the time. The easiest thing would be to say to the members, we're closing for 6 weeks, but of course we can't do that because they're giving up their club for a long time anyway, which is very kind of them. So we've got members playing. They'll be back on today after yesterday's rain on the grass this evening. So it is, if someone says to me, what's the toughest part of your job, it really is balancing the two. A members club, high expectations, and then a world-class tennis tournament, 500 ATP ranking points, and trying to balance in the two without upsetting too many people. That's the hardest part.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you, because obviously once you've got the championship out of the way, it's not sort of let's relax, because you're balancing the needs of the members as well as the championship. So tell me a bit more about how you do that and how you sort of mitigate that.
Well, I mean, it is quite difficult, but from the day after the tournament, the members are allowed, they play on every grass court, including centre court. The day after the tournament, probably chairman's doubles on centre. Meanwhile, this whole thing's being taken down, the stands and everything. So it is quite difficult. We have to have safe walking routes and lots of extra security guards to direct people. But we don't stop. We don't take, members can't play. So it is quite difficult to balance the two. I think we pull it off just about. Obviously the members get a bit fed up when there's no facilities to use. Even our indoor courts. I mean, as a club, we've got 10 permanent indoor courts, and then we have 2 winter bubbles. So we've got an extra 4 winter courts there. Even 8 of those indoor courts are used for the tournament, for hospitality, for the members, the players' lounge, where they have all their pool tables and all their food and all their sort of relaxation area. So pretty much every single square inch is used for something different in the tournament than what it is for the rest of the year. And anytime we're doing any development or any sort of work here, the first question you have to think is, what goes here in the tournament? Particularly this project we've just done in the winter, relaying 6 clay courts, 4 hard courts, 2 paddle tennis courts. We couldn't just say, put that there, put that. Even something as simple as a drainage cover. Is that covered during the tournament, because we might need access to it? So it's a lot of planning, a lot of forethought, and I think generally looking after the members, we do okay. They might say, "Oh, you could always improve," but we can always improve on anything. But it's a full-time job trying to balance the two.
Tell me a little bit more about that project you just mentioned there, because that sounds like it was quite a mammoth task. Was you there obviously from infancy to seeing it the whole way through?
Absolutely. I mean, the planning, I mean, we put it off a year because of the pandemic, but the planning's been going into this for probably 3 or 4 years. So one half of the club where we had six shale courts, we're now relaying them into 6 Italian clay courts. We had 4 hard courts, which were sort of, for some reason, they were raised about 600 mil higher than the rest of the sort of club. So, and that is those hard courts, those 4 hard courts double up as the sort of what they call the compound, the area where most of the articulated trucks are coming in at the moment. So everything had to be come down a ramp from that extra height. So that those 4 courts were excavated to make it level, new surface, ability to put 2 new domes up. Clay courts have all been realigned because they were at a slight angle to the grass, all been realigned. So it was a massive project. We didn't really start it until sort of August last year. So it was a real rush to get everything sort of to the stage where we wanted it completed for this build to start. So it was funny that the stand builders, the court protection people, they were sort of coming in one gate and the builders were going out the other gate. So it was, again, it was sort of moving all the bits of the puzzle around to make it work. 2 new paddle tennis courts, which is obviously a sort of a big sort of phenomena that's hitting the sort of sport of tennis, or sport in general. Really, it's the fastest growing sport around, biggest sport in Spain now other than football. Everyone wants a piece of it, so we've got 2 courts going up, and they'll start putting that up as soon as this comes down, so sort of the first week of July. So again, we've got it's not like after this, even normally it's a busy period for the next sort of 5-6 weeks after, but even more so this year. So it's going to be a busy summer.
All hands on deck. So like you say, obviously it was quite a big project. Is that one of the biggest ones you've done in your time at Queen's, or what else have you had under your belt?
Yeah, well, I mean, we, since going back to when I was here in the late 80s, we started relaying all of the grass courts, and that was sort of before the time of corrowing and laser leveling. It was real old school then. So we would take all the turf off, lay it over the winter on an area which wasn't being used, re-level a court by hand, with rakes and dumpy levels, spirit levels, string lines, everything, bring the turf back. So we pretty much relayed all 12 courts here then, or is actually 20 courts because the gap in between becomes another court. So we did all that over the period of about 6 or 7 years. Then we relayed the shale courts back then, and now we're sort of going around again. So within the next 2 or 3 years, every court on the site will have been re-leveled twice in the period that I've been here. So it's a constant challenge to try and keep everything up to date, modern, up at the times. It's a challenge that we enjoy, but it's busy. And probably the most classic question that people in our industry get asked is, what do you do in the winter? And so, well, we're busier in the winter than we are in the summer. So the summer, once the courts are in play, it's probably our quietest time, really. So obviously autumn and spring renovations, but we're always busy getting everything put to bed and then firing it all back up again for the year. And the winters might be a quieter period from the courts, but if we relay in courts or some of the other facilities, we're just as busy, and we've still got 4,000 members to look after in the meantime as well.
So as you mentioned, always busy. So this year, when the championship is finished and the last ball is hit and the trophy is presented, what happens next for you? Can you take me through sort of the next 12 months and how far out it is you start prepping for the next year, and obviously everything in between?
So as you mentioned, always busy. So this year, when the championship is finished and the last ball is hit and the trophy is presented, what happens next for you? Can you take me through sort of the next 12 months and how far out it is you start prepping for the next year, and obviously everything in between?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, obviously tournament finishes. We have a bit of a corporate day the day after, where some of our sponsors get used to the centre call, which is quite interesting because the stand builders already started taking the stand down. So we basically get all this sort of hardware out. We get the club back to how we are. As I said to you earlier on, we've got several areas of grass courts. We've got the centre court, and we've got a block of 2 courts, which has another court in between when we sort of play intermediate courts. And we've got another 2 big banks of courts. One's got 9 courts on, one's got 8 courts on, but there was only ever 4 or 5 in play on those courts and those banks at the time. So once Wimbledon's over, so by the time, which is about the time this all the stands and everything out here, we then move the members onto the fresh block of grass courts in between. And so they've got a free run at nice, brand new, unused, unsmashed up grass courts, and they will play through until late September, and then our autumn renovations start. All the normal stuff, scarifying, spiking, seeding. Obviously, we've done a bit of collaring in recent years. We may be doing one field this year, but that's been complicated by one of the contractors we were going to use now can't help us out there. Plus, as I already mentioned, all the other work we've got going on the clay courts and the hard courts. So, we don't want to spin too many plates at one time because we'll end up dropping some probably. So we get all the grass all sort of renovated up once the season's finished. We've already had the grass courts in for nearly 3 weeks already, so the grass court's quite a long season for us here. And then we're on to the sort of a bit more of the clay courts, hard court tennis. The 2 domes have got to go up, so we've got 2 domes there. As I say, one of them's over 2 indoor clay courts. New type of clay for us to maintain this year. So we got the guys coming over from where the Rome Masters have just been played. They're coming to lay the courts, so they're coming in from the 11th of July to start laying the very top surface on there. So we've got to learn a bit from them, because although most clay courts, which I've had a lot of experience on, are sort of generically similar, there's always slight differences. So we need to sort of learn a bit from those guys. I've been going over to the National Tennis Centre at Roehampton when they've had 4 of these courts laid, and helping, overseeing, and also learning from the guys there. So we can take that forward. I spoke to Andy Murray there about the courts there, those courts before we decided to go with those here, and he liked them. So hopefully, ours will turn out just as good, and we can be looking after the members on those. And then we're into the winter. As I say, if we corner these other block of courts off this year, that will be trying to make sure they're strong enough to play on come next spring. And then next summer, once we get into the spring, the spring renovations start all up again, and it's pretty much a smaller version of the autumn renovations with a scarifying, seeding. But you're always working backwards from your next tournament. We know when the tournament starts, so we know practice starts, a week before that or whatever. Members are on for 3 weeks before that. So it's constantly looking at the calendar, planning, and working your timescales out. Really, I can't overstress just how non-stop it is. Really, there's quieter times, Christmas and all that sort of stuff, but and the way the weather's changed, it seems to be a lot milder all the time. We have hardly had any rain this spring this year, and yet last year never stopped raining. So it's just dealing with the elements and the climatic change as well.
So do you do a full renovation on the courts every year, or?
Well, it depends what you mean by full renovation. We always very heavily scarify, aerate, seed, top dress, fertilize, and then always sort of wetting agents, all that sort of stuff. As regards to sort of colouring, we've never really done an awful lot of that, but we did some, not last summer, some before. Worked out really well. We had to relay some courts. Decided to change our grass seed mixture up a bit. Because we've always been quite traditional. We've had a mixture of 2 ryegrasses, 2 fescues, and a bent. So we've just slightly started to change that. We've still got some fescue in there because I'm quite a fan of getting those finer bottom grasses in between the ryegrasses to help stop the perennial getting in there. But you can't stand still. You've got to tweak things as you go. So yeah, it's always a full renovation. It's always a bit of a battle against time as well to get it done before the weather changes. But generally, we crack on. Obviously, we take the courts out in a sort of a rota. We need some courts in for the members to play where we work on one block. Normally, the block that's going to be the block opening first, the following early summer.
So can you take me through what sort of your preferred kit and materials and suppliers and such that help you with your renovations, and what you lean on for that?
Well, I guess most of our scarification is done with our tractor-mounted gradient scarifier. We had a reel made up many years ago with slightly smaller spacing, slightly thinner blades, So it's very much for fine turf. So we'll be doing most of the scarification with that. We've also got some Dennis FT 510s which we can use to sort of go around the edges where you can't get quite so close, or if the weather's bad, you know, we can go on those slightly lighter machines and the tractor mounted equipment. Tractors, got 4 tractors, got 2 Massey Ferguson tractors, which are getting on a bit now, but they're very, very reliable. Never let us down. Two John Deere tractors, all compact tractors, nothing too big for our fine turf. Most of the all the seeding's generally done with Sysis Fairy Seeder. We've just bought a new one of those last year, again tractor mounted. We've also got a black Pro Seeder, I think it's called, the pedestrian one for the smaller areas and some of the baselines. Still on the base ends, we'll be doing some manual with a weasel, you know, sort of cultivation of those areas to help break those sort of compacted areas up and get seed onto those. What else? Got a Technique sprayer, top dresser. We got a Metermatic top dresser. Again, it's not the newest, but you know, we look after equipment here. We really do look after it. It's well serviced, and you know, I think that the Metermatic's probably close to 20 years old. Doesn't look it, but it, you know, it does the job, and you know, we're comfortable with that. Mowers, we're currently using Allet. They called, I can't remember the final. Allet fine turf mowers. It will come to me. We've had those. These are the 3rd batch of them we've had. They're greens mowers. We've probably had those about 3 years now. But of course, everyone's looking to be a bit more sustainable and looking at electric machinery now. So all of our we haven't really got, we've got a few electric machines, but not any mowers yet. And you know, that's probably what our next purchase will be. Especially working in London, there seems to be more restrictions for us and elsewhere. So we'll be looking at that. Obviously, there's cost implications to that as well. So we've got a budget for that and work out. Next time we purchase will probably be some sort of battery operated equipment. We looked at the various options at Saltex last year. And we liked what we saw with a few, but I think there's still a bit of fine tweaking to do with some of them. So by the time we're ready to purchase, we'll be looking at that. Materials wise, when we've relayed of our courts, we've always used Onga Loam from Binders, which is a good product which we like. And seed, we use Barrenbrook seed, and we've got our own sort of mixture. We couldn't necessarily say it's a special mixture. It's not sort of Colonel Sanders, you know, secrets, but we do tweak it as we go along when new cultivars come around. And we tend to use mainly ryegrass, particularly in the spring for our overseeding in the spring before the play, because we've only got a few weeks before they're playing on it. In the autumn, we'll use our mixture with some fescues in it to try and help, you know, give us that real dense sort of bottom grass and dense sward that we're trying to achieve.
So in terms of the kit there, obviously, as you mentioned, budget has to be sort of taken into consideration and the money implications of some of those, you know, big bad boy machines you've got going on. So are the club quite good in terms of, you know, if you have a wish list or if you say we need this because of that, quite good in terms of getting you the things you need?
Oh, absolutely. I can't really have any complaints. I mean, I suppose every groundsman would say, oh, I could always have something else. But if there's something we need, and I'll say, then it will probably, you know, there'll be a way to find out how to get that. I mean, the flip side of that is, as I've said to you before, we really do look after our equipment. It's well serviced. It's always cleaned down at the end of every use. So, you know, often on my my sort of wish list, if you want to put it that way, they say, oh, reason for wanting to purchase, and you put, well, because the last one's 25 years old, because we've had it so long, but it still works. But you know, so yeah, I mean, you know, we've got two power rollers now, but you know, they're relative. Well, one of them's 10 years old, but the auto roller we had before that, again, we had it for over 20 years, you know. So I'm a real believer, if you, it's a bit of a cliche, but if you look after your equipment, it will look after you back. So but no, we're very well looked after here. That I can't fault the board and the sort of CEO for over the years, you know, because they've changed as we've gone through. They've always been very very kind, if you want to put it that way, to make sure that what we need, they realise here how important that the turf is here, especially with the tournament and the members as well, that we need the equipment to maintain it. So they've always been very good in that respect.
I'm not sure if you listed all of them in what you just mentioned, but how many courts do you actually have there and are you working with?
How many courts?
Yeah.
And facilities and such.
Okay, so we've got, I say, in total there's 20 grass courts. There's only ever half of them in play at a time, because the gap in between is another grass court, if you like, and we move across, try and manage the area like that. 6 clay courts. We've got 6 outdoor hard courts, 4 artificial grass courts, and then when you go inside, we've got 10 permanent indoor hard courts, and then 6 of the outdoor clay courts we've got, 2 of those become indoor when we put a dome over, and 2 of the hard courts become indoor when we put a dome over. So I think we've got, and then the other facilities we've got, we're really only a rackets only sport. Obviously we're getting 2 paddle courts, we've got 2 real tennis courts, and if you've ever seen real tennis, a bit like what they've got at Hampton Court, Royal Tennis, some of them call it, we've got 2 of those. Not many people in the whole world actually got 2 on the same site. So we've got 2 of those, 2 rackets courts, which is what was the original game, what squash evolved from, very much a sort of public schools game. So we have the public schools championships every year, and then we've got 3 squash courts as well. So it's obviously very much rackets orientated. And then there's a gym and all the other sort of sundry stuff as well going on. But yeah, it's a lot of outdoor areas to maintain. Courts wise, and obviously all the sort of amenity areas and hedges and all that. We do it. We haven't got a separate team of gardeners or anything like that. We do the whole sort of thing there as well.
So lots in your remit there, lots for you and the team to look after.
Yes, but I'd rather it that way. I'd rather it be busy.
Yeah, of course.
And it's going back to what we were saying about schedules, and it's making sure you're looking after the right thing, A, at the right time when it needs it, and B, when you've got time to do it and you shouldn't be doing something else. So it is a case of planning it out. But I've been here a long time, so it sort of falls into place sort of naturally, really, I guess.
So in terms of obviously your managerial role, as you say, there's lots of things to juggle there and lots of scheduling and planning ahead. How was it when obviously you first took on that senior role and then was actually managing people as well as taking care of what you've got there? Because obviously it's quite a transition, and I know that you're not always sort of taught how to manage people and all the implications that come with that. So how was that for you when you stepped up and took the role you're in now?
Yeah, I mean, I think managing the team is something I enjoy, actually. And obviously, as I say, I followed on from my dad. So, I sort of saw the way he did it, and a few things I thought, oh, he's really good at that. And a few things I might do that a bit differently. And I'm sure whoever follows me will say the same thing, But, I'm very much a people person, I think. The whole staff here, we've got over 100 staff in total at the club, and I think I've got a pretty good working relationship with all of them. And I think they see me as someone, particularly now, obviously with a lot of experience, and others might come to me if they've got something they want to discuss, work related, but maybe not obviously my department. But no, I enjoy managing the guys. Good to get, we just got 3 sort of younger guys working with us now. When I say younger, they're in their 20s, but they're not in there, not as old as me. And it's good to bring those young guys in and give them experience, and sort of, they probably think, when sometimes, because there's a couple of older guys here as well who've been here a similar period to me, and we talk about how we used to do things and how easy they've got it now, So, but no, I quite enjoy looking after guys, managing them, motivating them. We run a full annual review process here, which is, always quite an interesting time. You get the paperwork around, you go, oh, not that again. It's quite tough. It's time consuming, not particularly well timed for us as well. It's always right in the middle of the autumn renovations. But once you're doing it, it's really, really makes you think how worthy it is of doing it, and how important it is, and what they get out of it, and what I get out of it as well. So the whole managerial side I quite enjoy. Bringing the young guys in, trying to balance the teams and who's working with who, and so everyone gets someone with a bit of experience working with them. And even during the tournament, we bring in, we have a lot of returners every year, people with call covers and people who have done it before, which helps us. And Adam, my deputy, is very, he's a real people person as well. He's good at helping to, spread the load there and help manage the other teams. Sam as well is happy to be my son. He's happy to, take on and have a few words of encouragement here and there to some of the guys. He's only youngish, he's only sort of mid-20s himself, but and all the guys here, they're really positive and good at helping guys who are maybe not quite so experienced, especially during that week of the tournament. And sometimes, if we have bad weather, it's all about, keeping your sort of chin up and holding your nerve at times, and just it'll work out. It always tends to work out in the end, but it can be difficult. But no, I think that the management and the motivational side, I feel it comes sort of naturally to me as well. I had a good teacher, and I've had great bosses here as well. The CEOs and the general managers have always been, great from that point of view as well. So I'm quite happy with that.
You sort of touched on there about, how the way you used to do things and such, which is good, because I was going to come on to this question in terms of what innovations have you seen in recent years, whether that be materials, machinery, grow lights, processes that have benefited you, and they've sort of, you think, well, this industry's really come on in that sense.
Yeah, I mean, I probably, if you ask some of the other tennis groundsmen, they would probably say, "Oh, Graham's probably one of the most traditionalist ones. He hasn't changed as much as others." Having said that, even from when I come into the industry way back then, the advances in grass seed technology and fineness of ryegrass is, fertilizer, compounds, the way everything gets produced. Supply chains, obviously that wouldn't be a riot last year with the pandemic and everything, but just equipment as well. I mean, when we laser leveled the field last year, I mean, the field was nearly 3,000 square meters, and it was done in a week. And I was looking at it going, my God, that gave me 3 months of backache, back in whenever, even more than that, more now, over a couple of years, So I think the innovations are always welcomed. I know at the time you might look and go, there are a few things which still make me sort of, I am a bit too old school, like GPS line markers, I can see that if you're marking out football pitches on Hackney Marshes, but for a few tennis courts, I'm like, I'm not sure about that. But but no, I mean, it's really interesting. We take the whole team up to Saltex when we can, and look, go and have a look, see what you think's new and innovative. But yeah, I mean, I guess we are quite traditionalists like that, and a bit of a believer if it's not broke, don't try and fix it. But on the other hand, we realise that more modern equipment can give you better results as well. And we like to get stuff down on demo. As I alluded to earlier on, the electric mowers is definitely something that we'll be looking at next time we go around to buy mowers. I think just how powerful and strong the equipment is now, the scarification equipment, the aeration. I mean, I don't know who's going to watch this, but many people remember the old Patterson spike, where you had this big lever and a big drum with spikes on, and walking up and down with that to get some holes in. And now you've got a punch aerator, or things that fires holes in the ground with compressed air and water jets. And it's just incredible how processes have sped up. And who knows where we'll be in another 10, 15 years as well. It's incredible. When I look at some of my colleagues in the football world, and you look at the football pitches now, every day looks like the first game of the season. It's fantastic. How turf support system, and we're looking at that in tennis as well. And that may come. I think it's a bit harder on fine turf than and that's no disrespect, because their turf's very fine as well, but when you're looking for the ball to bounce on tennis, it's slightly different. That in cricket, pretty slightly different.
I know you obviously mentioned there that you're quite traditional in sort of the forms that you take, but is there a piece of kit out there or a particular innovation that you would sort of like to get involved with, or think would be beneficial to you?
Well, it's interesting. You mentioned the grow lights. We actually don't have any here, and I guess the people in the stadia or stadiums probably benefit from that more, where you got shade and shadow. We've only got it on one side or one end because of our pavilion and some of our indoor courts. But I think we might look to go down that route at some stage. I guess the one reservation I have is about cost of running it, particularly after the way electricity and energy's gone up. So quite interested to looking at, and I know a lot of people would have had them for years, but I guess that would probably be something that could, thinking that probably be the most beneficial to us at the moment.
Yeah.
I would have thought. Obviously we, pretty much everything else, the, deprivation and all that sort of stuff, spoken about electric mowers too much already, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's not like we're using huge, great big bits of kit like you might see at, one of the big football stadiums or rugby, but I mean, obviously we've got, it's very tennis. A tennis court is not a massive area per court, but when you've got bigger areas, it's still a big area to look after. But I mean, we, everything here is hand mown. We don't have any sort of ride on triples or anything. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but again, traditional with the stripes fitting in between the white lines and all the rest of that sort of thing. So I can't really think of anything in particular. The grow lights would be interesting to try over a winter.
Yeah.
I know, like you said, you've got a variety of courts there. I wanted to ask you how, like, a tennis court construction differs from any other surface. So what are you sort of looking to achieve from the courts?
Well, obviously on tennis, you're looking for pace, bounce, trueness, evenness of the surface, traction for the players. But and that's why cricket and tennis, sort of fall in line quite well. We need the ball to bounce. Our if you walked onto our centre court or any tennis court that has pros playing on it, the way it's consolidated and rolled and firm, it's almost like this table is rock solid, during the event itself. And of course, if you had that on a golf green, they'd be chipping on a golf green, the ball would probably be bouncing straight off again, So I mean, we're it's all about the soil, really. First and foremost, clay loams, probably around about 23% clay. So, with a good drainage system underneath. Having said that, when Queen's was first built back in 1880s, the soil that was sort of brought in to build the club was all sort of very black, alluvial, rich, silty, free draining soil, but not a high clay content. And that's why when we relayed, starting back in the 80s, we brought the clay loam in to get the courts harder, so the ball would bounce a bit more and be a bit harder wearing for the players as well. Back in the 80s when the big guys started coming in, the Boris Beckers and the sort of Slobodan Zivovinoviches, who were sort of, 15, 16 stone studded shoes, the courts as they were constructed then weren't quite holding up. So now we've had to make them a lot harder. As I say, the innovations with the ryegrass is much tougher. Getting the longevity out of the courts. And of course, that's had a spin-off for our members because the courts last a lot better, a lot longer. So yeah, the construction is, good drainage system, a good amount of clay-based loam, whether we use Ongar loam, guys at Wimbledon and other places might use Surrey loam. And then obviously getting the falls right, getting the levels right, getting the good grass coverage, trying to keep Paranya out as much as we can, which is all sort of ongoing battle. But yeah, there's no real secrets to it. It's just getting it firm, true, and keeping the grass in as good condition as you can, so that the players enjoy playing on it. I mean, obviously, sort of the sort of constructional qualities of it are everything, but if it looks pretty good as well, it's straight away when they walk on, think, oh, that's a good court. They might not have even played on it, So you've got to keep all aspects of it, in the right order. It's got to play well, it's got to perform well, it's got to look good. So yeah, the construction of it is very, very, very important.
And with all those aspects that you mentioned, I think is it the LTA that sort of govern the championship. So do they sort of come in and have their own objectives and aims for what they want to see in terms of that?
Yes and no. I mean, myself and many of the other guys, Danny down at Eastbourne and Neil and and a few of us, we're obviously sort of asked to sort of contribute towards the LTAs, what their vision is, and the courts out and about around the country. So I wouldn't say it's necessarily been the LTA's forte, but they're starting to understand more and more what's needed, not just in grass tennis, but all the other courts as well. So that, but they do come here for the tournament, and you know, obviously our tournament is under their governance, if you like. But thankfully they sort of leave the courts bit up to us. We have the STRI come in and, you know, do their testing. We have the International Tennis Federation come in and do the court pace testing, check the speed of the courts. So there's lots of that sort of stuff goes on. But you know, the LTA think they know, they come here and they know what they're going to get, and they're pretty confident that everything's going to be, you know, suitable for the tournament.
How do you deal with really high wear areas of the courts, obviously, where the players are sort of standing on quite a lot? What do you do with those?
Well, I mean, during the event itself, there's not an awful lot you can do. You obviously try and keep the moisture levels enough so that the court's still playable, but not too low that the grass is getting overly stressed and worn quicker than it should do. I mean, obviously, the work that you put in throughout the rest of the year should hopefully help you keep those areas to a minimum. But it's grass, it wears out. Studded shoes, the guy, it's all men play here. It's all big, heavy wear. And then, you know, during the rest of the season for the members, we try and rotate the courts as much as we can. So they might have a little period to recover. We don't really have the option to do that during the period of the tournament itself. And then just try and get it as strong as you can. And that's obviously down to, you know, all sorts of things, you know, the right aeration programs, the right feeding programs, the right choice of seed, obviously, maintaining it, trying to keep, you know, weed free, disease free, pest free as much as you can to try and keep the turf as healthy as you can, which will all hopefully lead to as little wear as possible. But you know, we're obviously intensely working on those areas out of season to try and get them as strong as you can. And again, that's mainly in the straight at the end of season, getting on there, getting your renovation done as quick as you can, giving that those wear areas as good a chance as they can to recover, so that by the time you get to next season, again, they're as strong as they are, really.
So I know you touched on, obviously, the balance of the members' needs with, obviously, the championship. And I think you said that's the biggest challenge for you. What else is there challenge-wise that, obviously, Queen's presents for you and the team?
I guess one of the challenges, I mean, it's hard to see without being here, but you know, we're pretty much got neighbours on three sides of the whole thing. I mean, our car park stops as a fence, and then there's these big Georgian houses overlooking the grass courts. So you know, they get a great view of all the grass courts and all the tournament and everything on the practice courts and the outside courts. But that comes with its challenges throughout the rest of the year for noise. You know, we've even had people complaining when there's, you know, really bit of a water shortage and you're firing your sprinklers off and they're going, what are you doing? You know, there's a water shortage. So we're very exposed to neighbour. I mean, I've got no complaints with them. I'm just saying that can be a bit of a challenge. Being in central London, getting things delivered here at times, always access can be a problem, particularly at the moment with the tournament, and a lot of the car parks are built on with stands and marquees and things. So access around the site at certain times, access into the site is a challenge. As I said, the members just trying to keep, you know, turning a members club into a world-class event and overseeing that, dealing with so many different contractors on here. It's not just the stand builders and the marquee builders. There's so many different people here, from, you know, florists who are bringing in flower displays to, you know, carpet layers to, and just knowing that where they are allowed to go and where they're not allowed to go, and, you know, signage people, and I guess that goes throughout the rest of the year as well, really, because you know, the turf is quite a hallowed thing, being a clay surface. Obviously, on the winter, you want to try and keep off it as much as you can. The guys in cricket would know you don't really want anyone running over your square in the middle of winter and, you know, making it all sort of ripped up and muddy. But, you know, that's sort of out in the middle. Ours is right next to the car parks, and one of the members, dare I say, might try and take a shortcut across the grass one day, you know. I guess one of the other challenges we have is foxes, funny enough.
Okay.
real problem with foxes. The urban fox is sort of taken over, certainly in London, and oh dear, and we try our best to deal with it. But you know, we probably lose lots of nets every year. The cubs chew the nets, and you know, they mess on the court, and you know the ammonia in the urine can burn the court and that sort of thing. So I think that's a real challenge for us as well.
So for you, Graham, sort of the night before the tournament, a week before the tournament, I know you say you've been there 35 years now, so you're quite seasoned in that aspect, but do you still sort of get those butterflies before the tournament, or is there a few sleepless nights? How is it for you?
Absolutely. Funny enough, I think the older I get, the worse I get. You know, you sort of, I guess when you're a bit younger, you're almost sort of blissfully ignorant of some of the pressures, you know, but as you get older, you become more aware of it. So no, I do, you know, don't particularly sleep very well for this, you know, from now till it's all over, I guess, really. And there's just so much going on. Every year the tournament seems to get bigger. The structures here seem to, there's so much more going on. You know, so we have our main event, we have a wheelchair event, sometimes we have a junior event, and there's a lot to squeeze in that period. And, you know, the weather, obviously, we haven't really touched on the weather yet, but the weather really plays its part. And if you have great weather, it's so much easier. Last year we had pretty good weather, rained all day pretty much on the Friday, but other than that, it was pretty good. The previous tournament for that 2019, or was it 2018? One of them, it rained pretty much every day in the build up to it, and it was so hard getting the courts ready. They come on a bit slick, people slipping around. I mean, to me, that's the beauty of grass. That's the challenge of grass court. But the weather plays everything, and you know, we're just sort of praying for good weather, particularly in the few days before and the week of the event itself. So yeah, I do lose a bit of sleep over it. You know, you know, it means everything to me, and I probably get too carried away with it sometimes. But my other half probably says that as well. You know, he probably can't stand me this time of year. But
well, from what I can tell, Graham, obviously you're very happy at Queen's and you've got a lot of passion for where you work. So look into the future. Do you see yourself staying there until you sort of hang up, you know, your pitchfork and your hat, or?
Well, I would hope so. I mean, you know, depending how many years, what age we're able to retire going forward, might be working till we're 90. I don't know, but generally speaking, I'm hoping I'm here till I finish up. You know, 10, 15 years time, whatever it is. You know, maybe, you know, bring the other guys through and they take a bit more of a forward role, and I just sort of sit further back somewhere along the line. But not at the moment. I'm quite happy with the way it's going. But yeah, been here a long time. Love the place, love the people, love the event, and I'm one of the lucky ones, I think, in life. You know, I really enjoy what I do. Love getting up, come to work in the morning, and and I've been lucky. It's a special place to work.
And I think, like you say, to be in this profession, you do have to love it, and you do have to love what you do, because obviously it's unsociable hours, like you say, you're always battling against the weather, so you do have to have a strong passion for it, and obviously it's quite clear it comes across that you do. So I think that's a nice place to leave it, Graham. But thank you very much again for setting some time aside. I'm sure it's a very busy time for you right now, as we've discussed.
It is, but it's been a pleasure to chat. Thank you for your time too.